Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum salam.
Salam.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies. Assalamu alaikum, everyone that's joining us. We think we might just wait a couple of minutes to see, allow people give time to join. Ladies, how are you doing?
Good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Excellent. Well, alhamdulillah, I'm doing very, very well. I'm very excited to be having a conversation with you guys today and just showcasing and spotlighting all of you amazing women. I'm just going to check how many people are on there. If someone could tell me, that would be great. So we can start our event. Okay, so we'll just start and hope people will join us. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Good afternoon to you all. Welcome to the British Somali Educators First event, Somali Women in Education. The lovely ladies on the screen are here to share their journey, their career journey with us. We are very grateful and very appreciative of all the love and support you have been showing us in the past week on social media and all the messages that's been coming through our WhatsApps, emails from family and friends and colleagues. The theme of today's event is, if you can see her, you can be her. And this event is in honor and a celebration of all the phenomenal Somali women in education. As you know, throughout this month, we had International Women's Day, and throughout the month, we've seen so many different events spotlighting and showcasing successful women in many different industries. And I know for me and for many of us, it was very empowering to watch and see and witness the celebration of women who are leaders in our community, leaders in our society, and who are change makers for us and young women and all of our communities. Now, the Somali community is no different. It is filled with women who are excelling in every industry, and the education sector is no different at all. My name is Bar Hersey. It's a privilege. See how I've said that differently. The Somalis on the hill will probably be like, well, Bar Hersey. So my name is Bar Hersey. It is a privilege to be your host today. I am the founder of the British Somali Educators, and the women on the screen are some of our members and also our committee members who are amazing and do all the work that we need to do behind the screen. So a little bit about the British Somali Educators Association. It's made up of a collective of educators from TAs to NQTs, lecturers, heads of departments, everyone in sort of different parts of their career journey. And all of us have the same purpose and passion. And we are all committed to establishing educational equity for our community, for Somali students. And every member in our community or in our association is doing amazing work, working with either within their school context, within their city, whether it's from Leicester to Bristol to Manchester or London. And all of us are doing amazing work, helping our community and using our skills and experiences as educators to help our community progress academically, our young people to progress academically, but also in confidence, in esteem, and making sure that they're visible in the spaces that they occupy, in their schools and in their community, and help them achieve the best outcome that they can. One of the things that we're very passionate about is representation. We want to make sure that our students are able to see us as Somali educators in the schools that we work in. For me, a question I often ask when I walk into a new school and a new classroom is the whispers I hear from my students. I'm lucky enough to work in a sort of borough that has a really large Somali community. So often my students I hear when I walk into those corridors is she Somali? Is she Somali? Is she Somali? And that question follows me for the first, I'd say, 3 months in a new school. And that question for me, of answering that question and saying, yes, I am, and seeing the faces of, that just the light in their face when they realize, oh my God, this person is someone I can relate to, is one of those things that keeps me going, that empowers me as a teacher. especially one who got into education to give back to the community. And I know that's the same for many of the women here. We all have that conversation with our students, especially when we meet Somali parents who are so grateful to have somebody who's able to talk to them in a language that they can. So about a year ago, I took part in an event. It was a women's ed event. I shared the mic with the phenomenal Hannah Wilson. And then through that, my Twitter DM just honestly blew up. I got messages from so many Somali educators who were just happy to see a Somali sister on this platform. And so there's quite a few women on this screen that I actually met through that event. And now they are my sisters. They are my, confidant. They are the women that work alongside me with this association. It would not be what the association is currently without them. So today I want to spotlight and showcase these amazing women. The way we're going to run the event is I'm going to sort of introduce each woman, and they're going to tell us about their journey, their career journey, and then we'll have a couple of questions. And at the end, hopefully, we'll be able to share some of your comments and do a Q&A. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the first speaker of this event, and that is Yasmin Shil, the phenomenal woman who has a career that I would love everybody to know about, because I heard about Yasmin 4 years ago through another colleague of mine, who then I searched for her and I couldn't find her, but just as life, the way things work out, when I did the Women's Ed event, she managed to be one of the person that I connected through the DM. And Yasmin, can you please unmute your mic and share your career journey, introduce yourself to our lovely audience.
Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, girls. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name's Yasmin, and I was born and brought up in Sheffield. And for those of you thinking that my first name and surname, which you've probably seen on the publicity, are not Somali sounding, well, they are. It was my father's decision in terms of the spelling of the first name, and he found it humorous telling the story of his conversation with the registrar. And it was just the way that he added the extra S and the A. And it was a literacy issue in terms my father did speak English, but obviously he couldn't, he wasn't literate in that sense. And Sheil is my great-grandfather's name. So that's the context of that. So just to clear that up. So in terms of my main role in education, I am one of the skit leads and skit is a school-centered initiative training. And I look after the training of teachers across a multi-academy trust. We have 90 schools from Carlisle right down to Bournemouth. And I recruit, train, develop and support trainee teachers across our primary and secondary schools. And I'm lucky that it's a very unique trust and we have independent schools as well as state-funded academies. But I'm also a governor in 2 of the schools, a primary school and a secondary school within the trust as well. And I'm absolutely delighted to have joined BAR in terms of the Somali Educators Association. So how did I get to this point? Well, everything is down to my strength comes from my faith and family. So I'm blessed with an incredible family, mashallah, who was scattered across the world, but who are connected now via social media and Zoom. And we don't have those, what we used to have when I was younger, all those tape messages that you send to your grandparents, we used to do that all the time. But now, instantaneously, I can speak to my mum who's in Hargeisa at the minute. So if I was to sum my family up in 4 words, it would be humour, humility, honesty, and honour. And our WhatsApp message image states that our family is a circle of strength and love. With every birth and union, it grows, and every crisis faced together makes the circle stronger. And I talk about these family connections because my upbringing gave me values, beliefs, confidence, and most importantly, resilience that has made it easier for me to navigate this world. So people often ask me, what made me become a teacher? And I can't say that I made the decision early because I didn't. I loved primary school though, but hated my secondary school experience. So a quote from my year 5 report was, Yasmin is an extremely helpful and enthusiastic girl. She contributes a great deal to class discussions. She's one of the brightest and nicest girls I know. But that experience didn't translate into secondary. You know, I don't know what happened to that bright girl that they were talking about in my Year 5 report. And I only excelled in the subjects where teachers, I felt, had really high expectations and ambition for me, and I knew they cared. And my parents were so absolutely, you know, my dad was such a feminist and just wanted, I was the only one in his side of the family, the first one to go to university. And he really wanted the best for me, and so did my mum as well. So when I did decide to teach, the reason for I wanted to go into secondary was to support students like me. But I really had to navigate the expectation of others who think they are allies and but then still wants to pigeonhole me as a teacher who's going to just teach EAL's classes. And I remember when I first qualified as a teacher and I wanted to teach my subject, which is business, you know, the head teacher just said to me, right, I've got a great job for you, Yasmin. This is the job. You're going to be paid through this pot of funding. And there's nothing wrong with being an EAL teacher, but those teachers are specialists. You know, you do need to be an absolute specialist to be an EAL teacher. There's a lot in terms of the background knowledge that needs to go there. And I was not a specialist in that area. I was trained, I had a degree in business. I trained to be a business teacher. And I wanted my first contract of employment to be that and be a very good teacher. So I decided to find a role in Lincolnshire to teach business, and I ended up really enjoying it there. And actually what was great about working in Lincolnshire was the fact that these people had never met a Somali before. And so it was really interesting I'm very proud of my culture. So it was really good to actually just go through Somali sayings with people and explain where my family came from and what the heritage was, etc. So any time I had opportunity to wear traditional clothes, I would do. Then I moved to London after about seven years. And I worked as a head of year, then an assistant head and a deputy head in 2 inner London schools. And that's where I met Bar's friend and colleague who was working in one of the senior leaders in one of those schools. And I've worked in about 4 senior leadership teams across that period of time. And I've really made sure that within London, I was working in our own community. So I was working with parents who, like mine, want the best for their children, but at times they didn't know how to navigate the system. So in my role as an assistant head and deputy head, I've line managed heads of year, I've coordinated transition from primary to secondary in 4 secondary schools, I've worked in 4 senior leadership teams in London and Manchester, and I've also set up an in-house alternative provision because I was getting sick of children being sent to external alternative provisions, and it wasn't good enough. So I set that up for a group of schools in Westminster. And then I moved back to the north of England because there was a role there in training teachers, and I absolutely love that role. But I'm still involved with one particular school in Moss Side in Manchester, and I support the senior leadership team there. I do that mainly through, again, working within our community. So I now train teachers and I love this job, but I'm always disappointed that I've never seen many Somali training teachers on my programme, which is really why I wanted to join BAR, to support our community and trying to unpick why is it in the time that I've been teaching, I've never been in the same school as another, and I've worked in 5 or 6 different schools. I've never worked with another Somali teacher in the school. Why is that? And I've worked in schools with significant Somali populations. So myself and another colleague who's Sahara, who's on the call as well at the moment, we're trying to work with academics on trying to unpick why we're not going into teaching, what are the barriers to people not going to, because I think it's really important for our children to see more people like ourselves. Over to you, Bar.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I love how you just quickly skimmed over. I was SLT for a little few years, and I was in a couple of schools in London. Listen, you did
I'm just
so well.
back. Okay, I'm out of my comfort zone now. I'm out of my comfort zone. I don't like talking about myself, you know, and that's what I was trying to say about humility and honesty. And I think that it's what I think a lot of times that it was my upbringing, really. I can't really talk. I'll get emotional if I talk about my dad. But I think, you know, our families, you know, they raise us in a certain way. And I think that kind of love and everything that they, you know, you are there everything, aren't you? And that's what I want for our parents, you know, the communities that we work with. And I feel like they need to navigate this system. And it is quite complex. It's, yeah.
Well, I just want you to know you inspired me, because when I heard about you, I was a head of department. I was, you know, planning to go into senior leadership. And when I heard there was a Somali sister who worked in a London school as a deputy head, I wanted to meet you. And then by then you'd moved on to become, you know, train teachers and moved out of London. But it just so happens, you know, how you're supposed to make me somehow be you to be my inner circle. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
And I just want one thing though.
Yeah, go on.
It's funny how, you know, I talk about family, but one of my family's on the panel.
Yeah.
and it's funny how things come back and interconnections happen. But yeah, it's great.
I know, because in our community, for those of us who are the non-Somalis who are actually watching, we are honestly so, it's, you know, 6 degrees of separation. I think for us it might be 2, because everybody somehow knows somebody who's related to someone. And we tend to honestly know each other really, really well, which what makes our community to us really special. We're quite a tight-knit community. And Yasmin was talking about teachers who are many sort of Somali students or young graduates who may not go into teaching. But in the last week or so, I have connected, especially on Twitter, with so many young people who are doing their PGCE Somalis who have asked to connect with others. And that's been really phenomenal to see. And I am grateful that we, alongside with all the other, you know, we have some brothers who's part of our association also who are amazing at what they do as well. And everybody's been just chipping in and trying to mentor PGCE, giving advice, train teachers who are training. I was honestly very privileged to write a UCAS reference for somebody that came into my school to mentor my students, and for him to say, can you please write my UCAS reference? I want to become a maths teacher. And that was just amazing for me to do. Little things like that make what we do that much more special. Right, so before I can go on for, guys, I can go on for a really long time, so I want to stop that. I want to introduce the next person that is going to be sharing their journey with us, and that is Hibu, who is an assistant head, where she'll tell you about her journey.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bismillah. As Bar said, I am an assistant head, and I've also been teaching for about 8 years. And to be honest, teaching wasn't something I always wanted to do. And if I'm being real with everybody, it wasn't a career path that I thought when I was younger, this is what I want to do. Even though, as Yaz mentioned, I have a family full of educators, and education is so important to our family. And it's the pathway in which people feel honor, understand, and really feel that it's worthwhile. It's a worthwhile career pursuit. But for me, it was never my kind of vision for myself. I remember when I was 16, I was having a conversation with another pupil in my class, and he asked me, what do you want to be when you're older? And I thought, I want to be a solicitor. I want to have a career in law. That's the pathway I wanted to go in. And I pursued that pathway. I went on to read law at university, and I thought, yeah, that's it. I knew what I wanted to do when I was 16, and I was going to do it. And then it wasn't until I finished my degree that I realized, actually, this isn't really what I'm passionate about. This isn't something that gets me excited. And so I had to kind of do a lot of soul searching and thinking really as to what pathway was right for me. And I really asked myself what excited me, and really what excited me is what I saw in my family is this service to others. And I think coming from a really big Somali family is that we are always there to help each other, and we're always there to kind of serve each other and give back. And that has been instilled in me from a very young age. And so I've always liked to help and give to others what I never had growing up, or what I was missing. And so that kind of took me down a different career path. So when I finished my degree, I ended up going into a career in charity work. So I worked in different charity sectors for a while, and did some fundraising for different charities, and then got the opportunity to work with amazing girls within the charity sector, which helped us really launch a new charity venture. And this was to support street children in Morocco. And it was through that experience actually that got me into teaching. We ran a project called Streets, and it was to raise awareness about childhood poverty and the plight of street children around the world. And that project went around different schools. And so it was my first interaction working with young kids. And through that project, I was able to really get an insight as to the importance of helping pupils to build their awareness around world issues and building that empathy. And actually, it kind of ignited something in me that I didn't think I had. And that was that human connection with young people, helping them kind of traverse and build their understanding around the world that they live in. And it was through that experience that I realized, oh, maybe this is a pathway for me. Maybe this is something I could do every day. And I worked through that project, I worked from primary schools and also in secondary schools. And what I learned was actually children are the same, no matter where you go. And they have this weird thirst for knowledge and understanding that, they're constantly asking questions, and you're the one that's able to guide them and support them in finding those answers. And so for me, I thought, okay, I could see myself doing this. I could see myself actually supporting these kids and giving back to the community. And that's kind of what got me into that route of teaching. So when I finished the charity work in that project, I then went and did my PGCE. And subhanAllah, it's funny how things turn out, because I kind of feel like teaching found me in a sense, because my second placement in my teaching course put me in my old secondary school. And at the time I thought, oh God, I don't want to go back to my secondary school. I mean, it's like going back in time, and it was so weird. I saw some teachers that used to teach me. I looked at the office room and the toilets, and I thought, oh wow, this looks a hell of a lot smaller than it did then. And so it was a weird experience in the first few months. But after, I realized actually that was a really good placement, and it really helped me grow in my teaching career, and it also helped me really understand the importance of giving back to the community that gave to you. And the community that I was serving at the time did have a lot of Somali kids in the community. I'm not sure if everybody's aware, North London, Edmonton, high Somali population. And so the school, the second largest population in the school was Somali, next to Turkish. So in terms of representation, actually it was a good placement to be in, to be able to connect with the community in that way. And not something that I actually was used to growing up, because when I went to school there wasn't that much of a Somali population in the community. And so actually I was maybe one of 5 Somali kids in my year group. And so seeing that demographic change and seeing how the community has changed over time, it was really good and heartwarming to start connecting with that community and really being a source of kind of representation and inspiration for some of these kids. And so it was a really good kind of career journey for me. I guess from there, I stayed there for about 8 years, and I took several different roles. And one of the roles was in my NQT year was leading Key Stage 3, leading Key Stage 3 in regards to additionality and more able kids and narrowing the gaps with those pupils. And that kind of gave me the foundation to then progress up to head of department. And I stayed as head of citizenship and politics department for about 6 to 7 years. And through that, I was able to explore a range of different avenues within the school and set my pathway into senior leadership through that experience, and really get grounded in my understanding in terms of curriculum development. And it was through that experience that I actually started developing a strong interest into oracy education. And I started working a little bit with Voice 21 in developing oracy strategies within our school. And I got the opportunity then to lead up oracy education in the school that I was previously as an assistant vice principal. And so I did that for about a year, which gave me really good kind of strategic focus and experience, really. And from that, it led me to my current post as an assistant head in a school in East London. So yeah, it wasn't a straight line, and it kind of went left and right and up and down, and in a sense, yeah, the education sector found me rather than me finding it in my early stages. So that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Gibor. I've got a question for you, but I'm mindful of the time. I will ask one question, which is, what's your greatest challenge you found sort of in your journey from doing your PGCE to now being an assistant head?
Wow. I think the biggest challenges has always been for me is managing others. I think when you're in the classroom, it's very easy. You learn pretty quickly how to manage a class, and that is developed and secured over time. But I think the biggest difference from starting my career in the classroom, then moving up towards a senior leadership role, is managing others. Adults I always find are so much more difficult than children sometimes, and having to do that in a kind of tactful coaching and collaborative way has been an interesting challenge, but a challenge that I think is good, and that's helped me to really grow.
Thank you so much. I am going to ask for everyone to give an advice, but towards the end of the event. So I'm now going to move on to our next speaker, and that is Habon Muse. So Habon you're going to tell everybody, but you're an NQT, so you're fairly new in your career, but I know you, again, have a different journey and different sort of story to tell than others on the panel. So thank you.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. So my name is Habon Muse. I'm in my NQT year. So I'm at the start of my career. So it's lovely to see all you beautiful ladies and sharing your stories and to inspire me to know that I can further develop my career and move forward. I didn't always know that I wanted to be a teacher. I come from a family full of strong women, and most of them are in the education sector. They've always inspired me to take my education seriously. Education's always been a focal point in our family, and even to just be whoever you want to be. So, if that's a career that you want to go into, they've always pushed us to try our best and given us multiple different resources and avenues to get there. In the beginning, I always knew that I wanted to work with children. So when picking my degree, I did choose children's nursing. So I worked in Great Ormond Street Hospital. I did my first placement, and in Great Ormond Street Hospital, because it's like children with long-term conditions, they also have a school set up there. So I found myself gravitating towards the school and helping the children out with their work and developing their skills and their fine motor skills. And then I realized I had to take a step back and realize, do I want to work with children in bettering their health or bettering their education? And I felt like the nursing wasn't for me, in the sense where I felt it wasn't the right career choice for me. So I didn't want to continue and waste, university is expensive. And I didn't want to sit there and waste my money and do a career that I didn't feel like my heart was full out of it. I felt like I struggled with it because it was very emotionally draining as well. And so I took a step back. I stopped the course, and I spent the remainder of the year until the next academic year just thinking and talking to family members and thinking about what I really wanted to do, which is when I decided, instead of doing a degree where I'm going into straight away education, so instead of doing the primary education 3-year degree, I went into education and social sciences. So it allowed me to, you know, look at working with children with in a range of different settings. So it gave me the skills to work in like social work, education policy, welfare, and even just working with children in schools. And then during that, we were allowed to go on placements. So during that time, I volunteered working in a school. Luckily, having the connections of the women in my family, I worked in a school local in my area, which is very diverse and had a lot of Somali children. So I spent once a week volunteering there, and then that's when I knew, like, I found my calling. I couldn't wait to stand in front of that class and inspire those children, and, you know, shape them for their future. So I decided to finish my degree. When I finished my degree, I took the PGCE route, did my primary PGCE, and it was different than I anticipated, because I started my degree and I thought I was going to be on placement the whole time, and I was going to, you know, have the whole year. But then during March, coronavirus hit, so we had to take a pause, and I had to complete the rest of my training online. So it was a bit of an adjustment. So we did mainly, like, you know, stuff online, which was lesson planning, because I missed out on the big focal point of my placement, which was towards the end. So that was an adjustment, but alhamdulillah, I got through it, and I passed. And then I came to do my NQT year, and I've started my NQT year, and I kind of felt better knowing that every other teacher went through the same thing. So they were coming back to new like settings, so they didn't know what was going on. So I wasn't as nervous. It was like, oh, we're all in the same boat, thank God. So I did that, and then I'm doing my NQT year right now. It's been going great. It's been I've had challenges. I had to adjust to online learning, but luckily you teachers have already done it, so it was easier to adjust to it. I work in a school that's very diverse now, and it's great to see like Somali children, even just, you know, working with children in different ethnic backgrounds, and like parents that, you know, I feel like they want the best for their children, but they feel like they don't know like what route to take and how to, like, you know, facilitate that. So I know that when I see Somali parents picking up their children, like, and they see a Somali teacher, they just smile and they'd be like, oh, like, and like I have a child I'm in year 1, so there's a parent in year reception right now, and she was walking past my classroom just like 2 days ago, and she was like, oh, maybe you'll get this teacher next year. And it's just like, it's happy to see. And, you know, I'm grateful that I come from a family that like have inspired me, like, so yeah, that's my story so far. So yeah,
thank you for sharing. So can I just claim, so Habon's my niece. So I'm claiming that I inspired her.
you did.
I always say that every time. I'm like, she's going to teaching because of me. She wasn't thinking of teaching before. Thank you, Yvonne, for sharing that with us. I'm just going to tell everybody who's watching us, if you have any questions, please put in the comments so that we can sort of answer some of your questions as we go along. And before I do that, I'd like to read a couple of comments that have been made, and which are beautiful to see. And we are definitely here for those comments, and it's the reason why we're doing what we're doing. So Faiza's comment, I'm so inspired. I recently started my journey. I'll be training for my PGC in September. This has come at the best time. I felt so alone at first. That last sentence, many of us have felt throughout our career until we met someone else that, you know, looks like us, or another sister or another brother, and we're like, oh my God, I didn't know you existed. And those were the comments I was getting on Twitter in my DM. Another comment I'm going to read is, says, hi all, I'm one of 10 Somali sisters at Bristol doing an education degree. We are all in our final year. That's so amazing, mashallah. I'm sure most of us are watching you today. You sisters are a real source of inspiration. Thank you so much. That's nice to hear. Read that and hear that and share it with everyone. Okay, so I'm going to now introduce the next speaker. And I'm thinking I've been talking for a while. I'm just trying to find who is my lovely next speaker. After Habon, am I right in saying, Muna, you're next? Yay. Okay, so Muna is our next speaker.
I think it's Zahra, but I can go next if you want me to.
Oh no, it is Zahra. I apologize. You're so right. I've got it in front of me. Zahra, you see, she let that one go. Zahra, you're definitely coming to say.
I thought let Muna go ahead.
No.
But,
Zahra, I met again through Twitter. She's an amazing young woman who's a head of year and an English teacher. And she's often the one that I will say, Zahra, is this okay? Can you correct my English? Because English is my third language. So I'm always messing up. I always say I'm EAL. I'll always be EAL. So I'll say it's English teacher. And Zahra is the English teacher. I'm always referring to Zahra.
Okay, so Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Bar. And it's great to hear everyone else's stories as well. I think I found commonalities and I can resonate with a lot of your stories, especially if we think about my experience in school. So I was one of the students who was seen as perhaps a coasting student. I think that's what we'd call them now, students who are not causing any behaviour issues, doing the work, perhaps would pass, but then at the same time, perhaps are not challenged. And I think that Yasmin's comment about expectations really resonated with me, because I think that's where my journey started. If I think about my experience at school, it was really my parents and my family who really pushed me to do really well at school. Without them, especially my mother, I wouldn't have been where sitting in front of you today. So if we then move on, I think when I got to GCSE level, a lot of the education that I was getting at school, my parents had to supplement with extra tuition and things like that, and it's stuff that would go out of their own pocket. And I think that after a while, one thing that I realized was the importance of parental engagement and making sure that families understand the systems as well as all of us as well. And then, so when I got to my A-levels, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know what to study. I just did, and I thought I was going to become a scientist. So I did I picked biology, chemistry, and I think it was maths. And then I could have picked the fourth one. So I decided I got a good GCSE grade at English, so let me just pick English. It was really my A-level English teacher who, within 2 weeks of studying A-level English, I went home and I said to my mum and dad, I want to do a degree in English. This is what I want to do. And they were like, what are you going to do with a degree in English? Are you going to become a poet? Are you going to become a writer? And I thought, nope, but I just know that I like to critique texts, I like to read texts, and I want to really further my understanding there. So then I ended up doing my degree in English. And then when it was done, I thought, damn, I should have done a vocational subject. I don't know what to do now. So then I went on and did my MA. I went back to university, did a master's in English, and then spent a few years thinking, okay, I'm going to become an English as a specialist language in Saudi Arabia. So I went to Saudi Arabia for a year just to teach English. And I enjoyed it. I think it was a good break to have. One thing that I think now, looking back at it, I was really avoiding going into secondary teaching, even though I'm in it now. I thought, you know what? No, I can't be in a classroom in front of children. They're not going to listen to me and things like that. But then I came back, did my PGCE in English as soon as I came back. And so you could say that I kind of stumbled into teaching. I did my PGCE, and after I did my PGCE, I realized that this is for me. A, I get to teach my subject that I really, really like. And B, one thing that I learned about young people is that they're really open-minded to a lot of things, and that's where you have the impact on humans when they're young. I think that when they grow older, then obviously science and all of that, but then during my career in English, so I've been a head of year. This is my first year as a head of year, and so this is my first year as a head of year. And I think one of the main challenges was, initially I thought, I'm going to go down the curriculum route. I don't think I'm going to be a head of year. But then when the job role came up, it was, let me just try it out. Let me see how it goes. And I think post-COVID, I was thinking, you know what, take the bull by the horns and think about just challenge yourself. So then I did that. And this year, while it's had its challenges, I think has definitely solidified for me that I really am interested in the pastoral route and thinking about students accessing and what enables students to access education and what supports them in being able to sit in the classroom and understand the learning, but also the importance of that parental engagement that I came back to at the beginning. So families knowing and being able to navigate a system. And I don't think that the issue is necessarily exclusive to just Somali families. I think a lot of EAL families have, or families who are new to the country often don't understand the systems that exist in this country. So supporting those families, and I think my experiences have allowed me and helped me to kind of do that. And just a quick comment about how I met Bar was through that Women in Ed thing. And I was one of the teachers who messaged her on Twitter and just said, I don't actually know any other Somali senior leaders or any other Somali teachers. It would be great to get involved. And since then, the British Somali Educators has been really good to kind of connect with other teachers and other people within the field. And that's me.
Thank you so much. And you are a very, very much integral part of that association, and have been active from day one. And I'm very grateful. We're all grateful for your input. There's a question that I'd like to pose before I move on to the next speaker that's come through. And I think Yasmin, I think you might be the best person to answer this question. Do you want to just read the question and answer that, please?
Yeah, I think Marianne asked the question, what advice can you give a teacher who already has teaching experience and wants to take the assessment only route? There really is a lack of information on that route into teaching. What we'll do is Sahar and I are organising a couple of sessions. So we'll do one session on people who've already got teaching experience in the assessment only route, one for how to get into teaching and applying for your PGCE, and another one for people who are currently doing their PGCE and are going into what the early career year and what the next 2 years of induction, because it is significantly different next year. So we do know that we need to do a session for you there. We'll be in contact soon.
Right. What I'll do is I will just sort of signpost everyone to our Twitter account, and I will ask if we can put in the comment our email address, anybody who wants to contact us to join us in association or have any questions specifically that you'd like help with, or we can signpost you and help you, maybe assign you to a mentor. That would be really great. So Marian, if you want to sort of just look at sort of either going to our Twitter, or we can give you our email, that'd be great. And then you can follow us and find out when that event that Zahra and Yasmin are actually planning, inshallah, soon.
But just to say, it will be the Easter break, this next 2 weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. So I'm going to move on to our next speaker. Oh, definitely is Mona this time. Yes, Mona. And I've known Mona for many, many years. And you definitely are another one who has a really interesting story on how you got into currently lecturing at King's. So if you'd like to, share your story with us, please. And hopefully there's somebody that's watching today that might be thinking of going into academia and have no clue how to get there, or maybe might inspire them.
Yeah, hi everybody, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mona. So I just to start from the beginning, I guess. I obviously finished school and finished college, and at that time I wasn't really sure about what I wanted to do. Hoya my mother raised the idea of, she was like, you should go into healthcare and do something similar to that. So I looked into doing midwifery, physiotherapy, nursing, and so on. And I went in to do a couple of sessions where I shadowed people. And I just kind of really started to enjoy the aspect of nursing when I went in. So that was the course I applied for. I applied to be a children's nurse. I finished my program, and then after that I went straight into working. I started to work on a neonatal unit, so neonatal intensive care unit, and then through that also there's training where you kind of advance from being a junior nurse to a senior nurse, and then so on. Sort of about a year into that, it was kind of having a bit of a crisis of what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. So I took a year out and I applied for a job in Namibia. So randomly went to go work in Namibia. And when I was there, I did a lot of healthcare-based stuff, but a little bit of education as well. And then I came back, went back into my nursing career and kind of went along with it for a while. And then while I was doing that, there was the famine that happened in Somalia at some point. And that was always on my mind. And I wanted to always go back home. I had never really been back to Somalia and wasn't born there, so I never really visited. The first time I went back was as an adult. I went to visit my family. And then I just went to the local hospital just to see what was happening in regards to neonatal care and children's healthcare. And while I did that, I started just to notice a lot of gaps in just basic training that could, where I could fill in those gaps. So what I started to do was I started to organize training sessions for the nurses and the doctors that were there, and then just teaching them basic neonatology. So the neonatology in itself is its own specialty. So it's quite difficult to kind of pin it all into the pediatrics. So my role was to sort of teach them my knowledge at that time of what was required for neonatal care. So I did that for a little bit, but obviously came back here. And then while I was here, I just started to look around to see what was available in regards to working back home. So I went back again and I worked with the IOM, which is like a UN agency, and one of the nurses, a few of the girls that I knew that had already gone out there. And then what we did was we set up a training program where we opened up the first neonatal unit that was in Somalia. And we worked with training nurses and education. So that was my first sort of foray into how teaching, I guess, at a university level, because we were teaching qualified nurses. We were going into the university setting and we had to set up a curriculum of what we wanted to teach them, how to teach them. And I just sort of really started to enjoy it. And that was the first time it opened up, my eyes opened up to actually teaching in higher education. So after that, I came back. I worked as a research nurse for a little while. And I just started to look into it. I started to look into what was required for me to go into academia and higher education. I found out what I needed to do, which was like a master's at that time. I did my master's in global health, and then I worked for a little longer, and then I just applied. I applied at King's College in the Child and Family Health Department. I just made sure that I focused on my transferable skills from actually working on in a hospital setting, healthcare setting, which was my expertise, and how I could utilize that in a higher education setting. So I got the job, I went in, and then from there, and now I'm kind of navigating the process of training as a lecturer. I think it's a little bit different from being like a secondary school teacher and a primary school teacher, because there isn't really a pathway where you kind of do a degree in lecturing and then you become a lecturer. It doesn't quite work that way. You kind of have to specialize in something, and then from there you start to work in aspects of doing research, you start to publish papers, and then that's the type of thing that catches their eye. So that's what I did at the time. And then now I'm kind of going through the process. I just got my fellowship in Higher Education England, and that means that I'm recognised as a lecturing fellow within the Higher Education England Association. And yeah, so that's my journey, and that's where I am at now. I think the main important thing for me at the time was I've never been a career trajectory type of person. I've kind of just gone with what I felt in that moment and what I was doing. I went into a job. I started to see what aspects of the job that I enjoyed, what I didn't. I'm a big talker, and I kind of speak to everybody around me, what they're doing. Oh, how did you get into this? How is this possible? And then from there, I started to see that, oh, there's actually so many different routes that I can take. So from when I qualified, I must say, from when I was around 21 when I qualified, I didn't see a route out of nursing that just wasn't working in a hospital. But I think as time went on, you start to see that a lot of stuff, a lot of things that you learn when you're younger, as in university level and jobs that you go into, you gain a lot of skills that are transferable. So you just have to be able to map that out for future employers and show them that, okay, these are the skills I have. I might not be an expert in A, B, and C, but I can show you how these skills can be transferred into A, B, and C, and I can work to that level. It's been a challenging at times. I must say, it's a completely different environment. It's very can be quite competitive at times. So it's just trying to understand where I fit into that, and also not trying to. I guess you do feel a bit like there's a bit of an imposter syndrome when you're working in this field and thinking, oh, actually, do I know enough? But then you start to see that actually, yes, I do know enough, and I can learn what I don't know, and drawing on that. So I think so. The Somali community have always been my biggest champions, I must say. From working in a hospital setting, random others stopping me saying, oh, do you work here? You're doing so well. Just to being at the university where the girls will come in and just tell you, oh, I'm so proud to see you here. So you always just feel like they're always giving you that push and that aspiration that you need to kind of move forward. So I must say, like my family, I completely agree with what Yasmin was saying. Always trying to discuss what I wanted to do with my mother. She's never held me back in any way. She's always been the person that I kind of go to as my soundboard and tell her, oh, this is what I want to do. What do you think? And she's always just given me such invaluable or valuable advice. So it's been great. So that's my journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mona. And I'm sure there is going to be lots of people that are going to be very inspired by what you've shared. I want to filter a couple of questions before we move on to our speakers, and I'll select who I think might be sort of best to answer the question. And if there's somebody else who would like to add and give, develop that or give further advice, just put your hand up and I'll just ask you to unmute your mic. So the first sort of question that we have that I think I am going to ask, Hibo, I think this might be a question that you can answer. Samira has said she's very inspired. You are all amazing women. I have been a head of department for a number of years. I'm in the process of applying for assistant head roles. What advice would you give?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think when I look back when I was a head of department, there was a few things that I think helped me take that step up to senior leadership. I think the first was thinking about what am I doing in my department that is different to other departments that can be rolled out as a kind of research-based school improvement project. And I think that helped when it came to applying for those senior leadership roles for me to be able to evidence some examples of whole school impact. And so I would say one advice there is to look at what you're doing in your department, or think about something that what gap exists within the school that maybe you can do some research-based project to help improve the school in that way. And that way you've got something to evidence when you're applying for roles. And I think the second advice would be to think about who you look up to in your senior leadership team, and ask them to be your coach, and ask them to be your coaching partner, so that you can actually get an insight into the kind of language that is used at senior leadership, and also the day-to-day roles that might be needed, and the skill sets that are needed for that role, and to help you kind of coach you through to that next stage. I know that really helped me at my when I was a head of department. I was coached by the vice principal for a while, and actually that really supported me in making that next move. So yeah, those are the two key things I would say would really help take that step up from head of department to senior leader.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Hibo. I'm going to ask the next question. And this question, Habon, I think you might be sort of best suited to answer this particular question. The question states, hi all, I'm a PGCE student currently. The placement I have been on has been a struggle. What advice can you give for PGCE students having a disappointing placement experience? I think quite a few of us could actually answer this question, but Habon, since you are sort of the NQT, what advice would you give to this young, is Hisham, who's a young lady?
I would just like, don't let it affect you. So make sure that you're understanding, because I know that like a few of my friends during the course, we had different experiences and some of them had bad mentors. And I feel like that's just a reflection on them. It's not a reflection on you. So I feel like as long as you focus on yourself and you pre-plan your lesson and, you know, use that as a reflective focal point where it's like, this is what I don't want to be like, and this is what I don't want to like, this is not how I want to teach. So focus on that and make sure you're just doing what you need to do and focus on how you can, you know, progress and, you know, move forward as a teacher and what type of teacher you want to be. And I know it's like it's not something that I can't physically say anything that you can do when you have a bad mentor, because sometimes going through the routes of you know, reporting, it can be a bit daunting. Like my friend just recently went through that and she didn't want to. But she just like, now she has a second placement and she has an amazing mentor, and it's kind of like, you know, the ups and downs. So she's comparing it now and she's like, I'm glad because it's made me a stronger teacher. But I'm pretty sure maybe some of you ladies could have better advice or something that you could say.
Does anybody want to sort of add to that? Just put your hand up and that'd be, no, nobody wants to add. I don't know what advice I would give except for making sure that you can find.
CJ wanted to say something.
Who?
Jawahir.
Jade, I think.
To see. Go ahead, Jawahir. Apologies.
Let me unmute. Because I'm currently mentoring a PGC student right now, and I would suggest if it's so bad, speak to a university, because at the end of the day, you know, they're there to make sure that you are the teacher that you could possibly be. So coordinate with your lecturer, and maybe they can also like mitigate what is the issue, because at the end of the day, you don't want to drop out. And I've seen many kids, I shouldn't say kids, many young people enter the PGC and don't finish because of just one bad placement. And you're letting somebody who dictate your life and your future. So I just said, you know, speak up, basically.
Thank you, CJ. Oh, Jawahir, both names. So just so happens, Jawahir, you're the next speaker anyway. So you can, you know, unmute yourself and just unmute your mic, not yourself, and share your journey with us. I follow you. I've known you for many, many years, but I love following you on Twitter. And you always have something to share, whether it's educational or not. And you are such an inspiring person. I love how you say young people, and you're very young yourself. But you've always been quite mature in all our conversations that I've had with you. So please share your story.
Well, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, guys. So my teaching experience and my route into teaching, it's a lot different from going straight from uni into PGC and moving forward. So after I graduated, I did a degree in international politics, which is interesting, but it's not a job. It's not a degree that kind of easily leads into a job. So I spent a year TAing because I did apply to do my MA at King's, and I was umming and ahhing, would I be a teacher or would I go and do my MA? And the head of department at the school I was at offered me an opportunity to do a Schools Direct program. She was like, I want you on board. So then I went to Schools Direct lady and she wasn't so nice. And I think that experience sort of put me off. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. So I did an MA at King's. I did an MA in security, conflict, security, and development. And it was really interesting. Absolutely loved it. I've always had a passion for international relations and all of that. And then after that, I started working for different charities, consulted, and I also worked as a security analyst, which was really interesting. But doing that and like writing those like really major reports for different governments and government bodies, although it was a really cool, you know, quote unquote, lovely title to have, I absolutely hated the job. I've always thought this is what I wanted to do, and it just wasn't for me. Being in an office isn't for me. So I ended up applying for my PGC. I did a PGC in primary at Goldsmith, which was a great experience. I think I had 2 placements. One was a great placement, which is at the school that I'm working at right now. It was my first ever placement. My second placement wasn't so great, but I wouldn't let that placement deter me. So I was very resilient. So I've been teaching for 3 years now. I'm currently teaching year 6. And it's been really, really, really great. I think when I first started my placement in my first school, I had this Somali girl come up to me and goes, "Miss, are you a TA or a teacher?" And something wrong with being a TA. I was a TA. But she was just happy to see another Somali teacher. I don't really think that school had a Somali teacher prior. So it was really great. And I think she eventually became my student. I now teach her in year 6. So that's pretty cool. I just enjoy it. I think I chose primary versus secondary because I found that a lot of students, a lot of research showed that kids who didn't have a high literacy rate, that transition from secondary school, primary to secondary school, would be a bit more traumatic, a bit more problematic. So I've always wanted to give kids the opportunity to have a strong foundation to go into secondary school. You see those research about young Black boys or young Black girls, and they were great in primary school. So what's happened in secondary school most of the time? Is it, institutional racism? Is it, did we do them a disservice? Is it all these sort of things? So I thought being that sort of in between in year 6, between that and secondary school, would be quite fruitful. And yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm currently mentoring my second student. So it's great. I've been there for 3 years. I've set up a mentoring club for young Black girls. I set up a reading challenge for the whole school. So I've gone out my way doing things because it is a career that I'm very passionate about. So yeah, that's me.
MashaAllah. If you follow, I know a lot of people don't, maybe not follow you on Twitter, but I love following your stories about your class and how you've sort of instilled this passion of reading. How you've introduced them to so many different books with different diverse characters. So that I love following your sort of journey, especially when you share so much about what you do in the school and how much of an impact you're making. Because I think all of us make that impact on a daily basis. And obviously nobody sees it up with the students or in the context that we're in. But when you have people sharing little snippets of the things that they do, I find it really inspiring because I don't know about you guys, but I'm a magpie. Everything that I think will work in my school, in my context, or my children, or wherever, I will just take, and I will adapt, and I will sort of give it or share it with anybody else. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to read a comment, which actually is from one of my old students. Ihsan said, "Miss Hersey was one of the first ever Somali teachers I met while I was in school, and I'm now been teaching for 2 years." So that is so beautiful to see. I know a number of the students that I sort of taught or in my school have now become teachers. It was actually amazing to see one of our young Somali girls who, I don't know, I haven't seen her for many, many years, who now trained, well, she's an EQT now, trained to be an English teacher. And that was really good to see because she's there going, "Miss Hersey," down the corridor. And I was like, "Who is this person calling me?" It's not a sixth former. And everybody's like, "Who's that?" I said, "Oh my God, it's one of my old students." So stories like that, I think, really keep us going. I want to answer one question before we do, and I sort of hand over to our last speaker. We are getting quite a few questions come through, so we will answer them. Please bear with us. There's one I want to answer before we move on, and that is, okay. Where is the one about the family? Because I think that was something I could really answer. Okay, so it's Asia. Asia says, "Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is so beautiful and inspiring to see. I'm a mother of 3 and a PGCE student and struggling with work and life balance. Any advice you can give to not spending day and night working?" I think in the panel, there's 2 of us with children. So I didn't do a PGCE. I did what was then called the Graduate Training Program, a GTP, which no longer exists. I think it's been replaced by Schools Direct and all sorts of other things over the years. And I remember I was very similar to you when I was doing my GTP. I had 3 young children under the age of 6. And I remember how challenging that was, spending my day doing work and then putting the kids to bed and staying up at night planning and finding that balance. The only thing that really worked for me was using my support system. I would say, please don't try to be a superhero and try and do everything yourself. Call on everyone around you that loves you, that will support you, whether it's your husband, your siblings, your mother, your father, any family member, friends who could help you. I guess during COVID, that might be a little bit more challenging and difficult, but anyone that's in your bubble that could help you, please lean on them as much as possible, because we are human beings. And I know we women, we think, you know, nagnol, blah, 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 all that thing. I'm sorry, I'm a human being. I would say I cannot cope. I'm not coping, help me. One thing that I did that worked for me was I worked part-time for most of my career. I've only been working full-time in the last 2-3 years, now that my kids are much older. I have 4 beautiful children, mashallah. And most of my career, I made a conscious decision that I wanted a career, but I also wanted to be a really good mom, and I wasn't going to let anything jeopardize that. So the best thing for me was to work part-time. I actually trained part-time. It took me 1.5 years to do my GTP. Whereas all of my colleagues that sort of, the trainees that signed up at the same time as me did it in a year, I was comfortable doing that. It was a choice and something that works for me. In fact, I think it made me a much stronger sort of teacher, because it gave me the confidence to be able to do it my way and not whatever society or systems tell me to do it. So that's what I would say. Please, please do connect with me and connect with us. It'd be great to be able to support you. There might actually be, the other thing I tell usually PGC students or trainees, like all of us are in schools where there's amazing resources and amazing people that we know. Like we can connect you to that. We can give you those resources. We can give you the things that help you to make that transition or the training much easier. So please do get in touch with us. Okay, so I am going to, does anybody else want to add to that? Advice, any advice? Add to that? No, nobody? I'm going to miss it. Oh, Jawahir wants to, come on. CJ, go.
I was going to say, just try and cut corners. Like, try and find, like, work smart, not hard. So if you're a primary school PGC person, get the kids to mark their own maths work. If you're in the upper key stage 2, get them to self-assess. Like, just find ways that's going to cut your time in the classroom. Like, get them to do more of the work if you can, I think. Especially if you're a mother of 3 children. Nobody wants to be in the classroom until 6, personally speaking.
I completely agree. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so our last but definitely not least speaker is Afaf, who is also a young mother, or a mother of a young beautiful baby. Afaf, do you want to just unmute yourself and share your story?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Really inspired. I think there's something that maybe made me emotional by being the last, and just hearing your stories. It makes you reflect back to you, and then I don't know. I don't know. It made me emotional for some reason. I don't get it. Maybe I need to reflect after. So my name is Afaf. And the name in itself has a story. I am born and raised in Saudi Arabia. A lot of you probably would, maybe not so many of you, but some of you will probably relate to the fact that I don't necessarily have a typical route to teaching, because I didn't really graduate from the UK. I came to London, or I moved to the UK in 2009. So over 11 years, I stopped counting now. And by that time, I was already in my 3rd year doing nursing. So I did nursing. I was just listening to what Muna was just saying, and the difference between my story to Muna's is that she actually worked as a nurse and I didn't. I knew that was my mom's dream and it wasn't mine. I feel it was her dream because we were kind of limited of what you can do as a foreigner in Saudi. It has its own challenges itself. So when I moved back, I didn't know at the time, but I wanted something to do with researching, but I didn't know the degree or the route to that. And I remember, I think it was 2011, I decided to go back to education, and I finally found something that got me a little bit more excited than being a nurse, and that was public health. and teaching. So I had that direction because, and it's a privilege that I'm completely aware of. So I am not your typical maybe Somali because my father was a lecturer, and my father was, he graduated from Edinburgh University, and he was teaching English literature. And then when he moved back to Saudi, he had a job with the government, and then he became a lecturer in Saudi. So for me, I didn't realize that that was a privilege until I came here, and then I saw how that can actually affect your confidence when you're applying for a new course, when you are a newcomer or you move to a different country. So the reason why I made that decision to kind of not be or become a nurse was that I was interested more in researching what makes people sicker before they're actually in the hospital. So I wanted to kind of investigate that more, and I did health promotion in University of East London, and then I did my master's there as well. I actually got sponsored because I showed that I was so interested in policy changes, and I took advantage of the fact that I was from an ethnic minority, and I was leading a research that was investigating TB cases and the stigma that surrounds TB amongst the ethnic minorities, especially in East London. At that time, there was many articles that were stigmatizing. They used to call it the immigration disease, and my goal was to actually not make it an immigration issue. And my interest infectious diseases then led me to epidemiology and public health, and then PG Cert. So everything happened within the space of 3 years. And I became a seminar leader in the same university where I was studying. And that led me to becoming a lecturer. So my route is completely different. I'm a nurse who hated the job and decided that I don't want to do this. And then I discovered that passion for researching what makes people sick. And then I became the social activist who all of a sudden my goal became, well, we need to kind of change the terminology around diseases, and these immigrants are not engaging well with the NHS, or these immigrants are coming in and destroying our data with their new diseases. And I was doing that in classroom. So I wish, in a way, sometimes I regret that I am a lecturer, because it took me away from that new movement that I was doing. And I moved to University of Bedfordshire in 2017, and I've been there ever since. I've progressed to a senior lecturer this year, which is again a new challenge. My goal is to kind of move forward to becoming more involved in the recruitment. I've noticed that we don't really have representation when it comes to higher education. We don't really have that many ethnic and Black, let alone Somali lecturers. And by being in a senior role, this will kind of allow me to have a better voice than just I shouldn't say just a lecturer, because I really enjoyed what I was doing. So when you really maybe listen to me or hear my story, you would see someone who would probably I didn't do GCSE here. I didn't do any A levels here. I came from a completely different environment. But that shouldn't stop you to kind of see where your future can actually look like. And I did that within a few years. So if I can do it, and I was from a very conservative, Saudi Arabian mentality where you either are a wife or a teacher or a nurse, which I was a nurse, I guess, you can actually break that. And you can break that and progress and do something a lot more. We don't all have to take the same kind of courses, and we shouldn't all of us just head towards healthcare, or there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel there's something, and it could be the reason because we're from Somalia and we lack a lot of a lot of skills when it comes to healthcare. But we should kind of think about other areas in life that we can excel in. So I would love to talk to you if this is something that you are interested in, or how do I break that cycle in terms of I'm just someone who came to the UK and maybe I need a little bit more confidence. We can have that discussion definitely. I hope I didn't take too long.
No, you didn't. Thank you so much. Like I said, everyone's got a different story. Excuse me. So it's nice to hear someone else's journey and story, which is completely different to mine and someone else's. We do have a number of questions that's come through. So I'm going to sort of filter some of the questions, and I'm going to ask a couple of questions of my own. If you sort of want to sort of answer that question, please let me know. If not, I will just select who I think might be the best person to ask. So I have a question that is coming from Abir Ahmed. She said, is it worth doing the QTLS instead of the PGCE? She says the QTLS is easier on the pocket, takes less time. What do you think, ladies? Yasmin, I am coming to you.
I would totally not restrict yourself out there in the market, because you even though it's going to cost more money, the QTS is the way to go forward, and also doing the PGCE. And the reason I say that is most teachers will have a Bachelor of Education and a PGCE. If you're going to work internationally, you need to have the PGCE. If you're working internationally as well, academic subjects, that's what they'll be looking at. They're looking for, especially in some of those competitive places in Dubai or, Kuwait, they are looking for you to have really good quality qualifications and the PGCE and the rest of it. So I would invest in doing the QTS, and you can then work not just in FE, but you can work in schools anyway, generally. But I wouldn't scrimp and save, because the worst thing is when we are, as leaders, when we're shortlisting applicants, you could be not shortlisted for your dream job because you don't have the QTS and you've got the QTLS.
Thank you very much. Another question came from Iman. Iman said, thank you for sisters. What advice would you give to someone who wants to work in places like Saudi Arabia or Qatar? I've never worked outside of the UK, so that's definitely not me. Who could answer that question? Zahra, I think, are you the only one who kind of taught outside of?
Yeah. My experience was very brief. It was only for a year. I think first establish what you want to teach and what kind of school you want to teach in, because there are international schools and there are also state-funded schools, and it depends if you're going to teach English at university level or if you're going to teach it to secondary school students. It's all very different. But as Yasmin said, you are going to need a PGCE. What advice, Bar, would you give?
Yes, what advice would you give to someone who's considering doing that?
Okay, often you apply through agencies, so make sure that you read the reviews of those agencies online. They'll tell you beforehand where your accommodation, or if they're paying for accommodation or anything like that, they'll tell you beforehand where you will be situated. I would say avoid agencies that say that your contract is anywhere within the province. So if it's just a contract to work anywhere in Saudi Arabia, you might end up in a very small village, for example. So make sure that whatever company that you go with knows, or that you know where they're taking you straight away, especially if you're going on your own. And use Google all the time. So ask them what's the address, and Google it and check how far it is from the city centre and things like that, because life is very different over there. So make sure that, especially if you're going by yourself, that you know exactly where you're going.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Zahra. So we have 10 minutes. We've got a few more questions, and I'm going to wrap up asking one question for everyone to give me their last sort of thought, yes, or their last advice to everyone. So the question is from Hodden. Hodden says, I'm loving the panel and all the advice you have given. My question is, how do you know the best type of school to apply for NQT year, especially with schools not allowing visits because of COVID? That's a really good question. Would anybody like to answer that question? Go ahead, Hibo.
So there's a few things that you could do to really get a sense of a school. I would say looking at their website and social media is one aspect, but be careful. The schools are always going to portray their best selves, and so it's not always clear what you're getting yourself into until you're in the job. So there's a few things that maybe you can do to kind of navigate that. I would say first, contact the school and ask to speak to the teaching and learning lead who plans for the NQT program. Ask to review that program and look at the training that is put on offer. And that way you get a sense of what you'll be getting once you get to that, once you apply or if you get the job. The next thing I would say is have a look at the comment section in their social media rather than looking at what they're putting out, and see what the feedback from parents is like, and staff, and see what kind of things they are putting out, and look at the comment sections in a more forensic way, and that can give you a better sense as to what the school is like. And then ask around if you know anyone who knows of that school, or you know other teachers or any other PGCE students that may have had placements. They can give you a good sense of what the school's like and what the leadership is like, to really get a kind of a understanding whether or not you should apply. But ultimately, I think anyone going into a new school or a new job has to get comfortable with the idea that you're not going to really know what it's like until you're in the role and in the school.
Thank you, Hibo. I completely agree. I know some schools do virtual tours as well, so you could see if that's on offer. I know many of us always look around and say, do you know someone who works at that school? Or do you know someone who's worked there? Or do you know anything about this particular area? And that always helps. So try and use your networks. I definitely echo what Hibo said. I know how difficult, I can imagine how difficult it is to actually do this without having to go into a school, because I feel sometimes, from previous experience, I know when I walk into a school, it has that feeling where I actually want to be in the school. And there are times I've been, done that walk and think, no, this is not the school for me. So I can only imagine how challenging that is. Okay. The other question is, what would you change about the education system here, whether it's curriculum or the school day or anything? What would you change about the school system here if you had the power to? And I guess, what is your last sort of words of wisdom to share with everyone? So I'll just go around if that's okay, because we've got 7 minutes and I want to make sure everyone gets to have their say, and then we'll close in sort of good time, inshallah. Yasmin, I'll start with you first.
I think I've spoken a lot, and it'd be good for somebody else. I will come back up.
Okay, that's fine. That's okay. I know you're out of your comfort zone. It's okay.
Okay. What's the question again, Bar? So
the question asked, what would, if there was anything that you could change in the education system here, what would it be? It didn't really specify, just asking for your advice. Or if you don't want to answer that question, it's okay. Your last word of wisdom for the day, for anybody who's watching, who's thinking of getting into a career in education, who you want to just leave your last word of wisdom with. So I will start then with someone else. Muna?
No, I'll come back. Sorry, I will. Okay. One thing that I will say, it's not so much a change, but I think that most people need to just come into teaching. There's nothing wrong with teaching per se. It's all to do with leadership. What I think some of the things that I've been reading in the comments is why I do teacher training. It's that there's something in what we call the teacher standards, and it's all about asking for help and support. It's teaching standard 8, and there's not necessarily people don't actually do that, and I think it's more to do with you know, the people on this panel, we will, because we're, you know, that's our heritage, our ethnicity. You know, we will ask for things, we will ask for help and support. We can talk to our family. That's something that we naturally do. But, you know, it's not culturally something that schools have really got into a lot. And also honesty. When I talk about honesty, I'm talking about, you know, where I've had trainee teachers who've been told at Christmas, you know, it's not going, you've got your first report, it's not going that well, you know, that should be a week by week conversation. And that just shows poor leadership. So I think that if I was to change anything, I'd give more time to schools, and the government is trying to do this, but I think more money for mentors and mentoring and support in schools. And that's where I think, because actually the biggest impact on students' results is good quality teaching. That's the biggest impact on students and results. And if we can get teacher development as being key, then I think lots of things will change in this country.
Thank you so much for that. Mona, go ahead, darling. So your last words of wisdom, you can.
Oh, I would say don't limit yourself. I think anything is possible for you. Anything that you want to do is just a learning away, if that makes sense. So you just need to learn where you can, and then if you can't, in regards to seeking help, where you can get it from. So don't be afraid to ask questions. I think it's fine to, if you feel that somebody is not giving you the advice that you need, just go to somebody else. Don't limit yourself into thinking, well, this is my only options right now. And just go for it. That's my biggest advice. You won't know what's going to happen until you try.
Thank you, excellent. So I'm going to sort of put you on a timer, ladies. Sorry, 30 seconds, because we've only got 4 more minutes. Jawahir, 30 seconds, your last words of wisdom.
Be organised. As a PGC student, join all the unions you can get because it's all free. Join the Charter College of Teaching. Grab any freebies that you can as a PGC student and an NQT student. Like, just grab it all because it's free. Do it. That would be my advice.
That's a great advice, and you can always connect with us. There is a lot of us in our sort of network that would be able to give you things from our own schools, or find someone else to give you from their schools. So please do that. Hibo?
Just echoing what everybody else said, I guess the biggest advice would be to take ownership of your own learning. As educators, we know that learning never stops, and we're always continuously evolving and growing. So take ownership of your own learning, utilize all the resources that are available to you. Twitter has great resources available to all educators. There's a huge education community on Twitter. I'm part of Chartered College of Education, which is really great, as Jawahir has said. So sign up to all of those teaching institutions, and you know, just make the most of it. Take ownership of your own learning, and don't forget to experiment. I think over the years we kind of forget that we are growing and developing. So continue to experiment and take ownership of your learning.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Habon?
I would say for your PGC and NQT, because I'm at the start, I would say not every lesson is going to be perfect. You will have a lesson where it will feel like, oh, this was like a really bad lesson. But I would take that feedback and as things to work on, and not as in like, oh my God, like, because you know, you focus on the negative rather than the positive. So I would take that and use that for planning your next lesson and work on those. And that's how you reflect. I feel like throughout your whole career, you're going to be learning. So I wouldn't focus on the negative feedback, because I feel like that's what we all do as human beings. So yeah.
Excellent advice. Thank you. Zahra?
I'm in full agreement with what the ladies before me have already said. I think making sure that you continue to reflect on your practice. And I just want to say, I know there are a lot of people who are struggling at the moment with their PGCEs and things like that who might be in here. And that isn't a reflection of the profession. I think you will always find a score where you'll be able to fit in, or where you feel that your values align, and make sure that you go there and you seek those opportunities, because someone else will.
That is so true. Okay, Afaf?
Hi. I was just thinking there are many people who could be put off with funding. So my advice would be there are so many ways that you can fund without actually paying for it. I approached my employer. They were more than happy to pay for my master's. And there are so many organizations that are happy to fund for anyone, women. There are, I think there's one called Women in Science. So they're more than happy that to fund you if this is something that you're interested in. So that's one. Another thing that I've just noted now is to build your portfolio. And if you're coming in with different kind of experiences, those could be transferable, and you can actually get into teaching by using your own transferable skills. So don't think that you need to have that traditional route to teaching. There are so many different ways. So empower yourself by actually researching and understanding that the different pathways that you can take to become a teacher, and you would be surprised. That's all.
Thank you so much. So I completely agree with everyone and what you've said. The journey, like in life, is never linear. There are different ways to get in there. There are different challenges you're going to face. There are different things that are going to come your way that you weren't expecting. And that's, in education, is no different than any other profession, to be honest. I think education, being a teacher, is probably one of the most challenging and one of the most rewarding career that you could have. It's not easy. There are days I'm pulling my hair out, literally thinking, what is going on? Why am I doing this? And there are days I come home and I cannot stop talking about my day. And my husband is just so confused because he's thinking, well, today's another day. I'm like, no, you don't understand what happened. So I have to spend the whole day talking to him about it. So that is teaching, and I am passionate about it. So is everybody else. So I really didn't share my journey into teaching, but mine is completely different to everybody else's. I'd like to close with my own. I said a little bit about me training with the 3 young kids. Teaching was my second career. So I was worked as a human resource assistant. That's the route I was going to go into. I thought I wanted to be a human resource director. I would have loved to be one. I was so fascinated with it. Then life happened. I had a family, quite young. And then I thought, okay, what profession do I go into? Teaching was one that really resonated with me, especially my new sense of purpose as a mum. I wanted to be, that different, make a difference for my own children. And teaching was a perfect way for me to do that for my own and other children. The one advice I would give is don't be afraid to pivot. There isn't one way to get into SLT. There isn't one way of becoming a head of department. There isn't one way of being whatever it is in education. Be okay with pivoting and changing your route. You don't always have to take the way up. So your next step in your senior leadership or your next step in your career, sometimes taking a side step is just as beneficial and as fruitful as taking a step up. I was a head of department. I knew I wanted to get to SLT, but I was still working part-time, really didn't want to, was ready for it somewhat. I became a head of year. The fact that I now have curriculum and pastoral experience puts me in a really unique position when I'm going for job, because I've done both sides. And that is something I'm really proud of always sharing with people. So pivot, sidestep is just as good as, going up. And also, please be mindful of that imposter syndrome. It's one that we all challenge, we fight with, always faces us. And I'm always on the phone to many of the women in the screen, just talking to them and saying, I don't think I can do that. There are women who call me and I'm like, are you serious? You are more than qualified for this job. A man would look at an application and think, oh yeah, I can do 40% of that. Great. This is a job that's perfect for me. We women have to think of all of it and making sure we tick that list. And this has happened to me previously. And I'm grateful that I'm able to occupy spaces where it's filled with amazing women of color, Black women, all sorts of women who have come before me. And I'm able to occupy those spaces with them, be a part of those spaces to get that nurturing and the mentoring that I need. Look for those people. Look for that inner circle. Look for that mentor. Look for that platform. Look for that space, people that would allow you to give you opportunities and build you up when sometimes society would like to drag you down and pigeonhole you because you seem to fit a stereotype that they've decided for you. That would be my advice to anyone. But I'm going to close on British Somali Association is in its infant stage. We are planning to do amazing work to be able to make a positive contribution to the education of Somali community, our students, our parents, in regards to policy and helping with recruitment, hopefully of young people, young graduates. We want to become teachers, especially in secondary school, because I feel like there are more primary school teachers than secondary school teachers of Somali heritage. So please join us. Our Twitter is on there, our Twitter handle. Our email is on there too. We would love to work with you. We would love to have you on board, and let's do this together, because this is a collective effort and you need to be part of that collective to make that change. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to this amazing panel of women who I call friends, my inner circle, my confident women that inspire me, and women we hope to inspire our next generation of young girls and young boys. So I want to share one last thing, which is a comment that came through to do with the lovely Miss Hiba Ilmi. And this is the reason why we're doing what we're doing. So I'm going to read that. It says, Hiba, I hope you don't mind me embarrassing you. It says, I just want to point out that Hiba Ilmi was one of the Somali teachers I looked up to in my own school. And as a result, I'm a science teacher myself. If you can see her, you can be her. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward. Hope you can join us on our next event. Take care and have a lovely evening.